I am playing a game called Smile but nobody taught me the rules for. We cordially invite you to join us on this wonderful adventure. There are many rewards to be won, much fun to be had and many souls to be mushed. In this package you will find everything you need for the adventure. You will be looking for jesters, imposters, and even a princess. Thrilling, isn't it? My first impression of this game was an image of completely random madness, with no clues or help, or we sent to hell. Though as the game progressed I started understanding that this wasn't entirely true. While the game masters could be vague, especially when it came to the punishment, the assignments were often quite explicit and to be taken quite literally. They had told us exactly what we would be doing in this game in the very first letter we received. We would look for jesters, imposters, and a princess. That's what went through my head when I pushed him into the ice-cold river. I am quite aware that it was a risky and impulsive decision I took there. In a matter of seconds a waterfall of thoughts ran through my mind. The boy I called Lucas certainly wasn't who he said he was. Lucas wasn't his name. It was Lee, my childhood friend who went through hell and back with me. But was that enough to consider him fake? I wasn't truthful about my identity either, calling myself Finn when I was still the same Alex. Even dyeing my hair and growing a beard didn't change that. In that sense I would be just as fake as him. But Lucas had lied. He kept secrets. He pushed a man on train tracks to die. That's what it all came down to. It seemed that he had betrayed us. I thought I had to choose whether I would kill my friend who was appearing malicious or a stranger who appeared kind and compassionate towards an enemy. But that's the thing, right? Things are never as they appear. And that's what clicked in my head when I looked inside the eyes of the two men wearing masks. I wasn't looking at Killian and Lucas. I was looking at Killian and an imposter. Duck, duck, duck. Killian was still shaking all over. After I helped him get over the railing he fell right to the ground. At that moment I couldn't really pay attention to him though. I was standing at the edge, looking deep down to the river. I can't begin to describe how much dread and guilt I was feeling after what I had just done. I took such an impulsive action. What if it was wrong? My heart skipped a beat as I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket. And I almost started crying when I saw Lucas' name on the screen. "Where the hell are you guys?" he shouted through the phone. "Lee," I whispered. "Are you okay?" "What? No, I'm not. Both of you just disappeared. Where are you?" "And you're supposed to call me Lucas, idiot." I wanted to laugh but only until I registered what he had just said. "What do you mean both of us? Haley is gone too." "You mean she's not with you?" "Shit. I tried calling her but she wouldn't pick up." "Which one of you took the game phone?" "Stay where you are. I'm coming home now." I answered and shoved my phone back inside my pocket. The relief of Lucas being alive washed away with an awful new set of emotions. Where was Haley, and if this really wasn't Lucas, who had I just pushed over the edge? What the actual duck? I heard Killian whisper. He was on his knees now, staring through the gaps of the railing. How did he survive this? This can't be possible. "What is it?" he continued. "What I saw down there almost made M throw up. From this distance it really could be mistaken for my friend, but whatever this was, it somehow managed to survive a fall that should have been fatal, but instead it was vividly swimming in the river." We heard a shrill laugh before the creature lay on his back and got pulled down with the stream of the river with a big grin on his face. I wish I could say that this was the worst thing I'd seen so far, but unfortunately the fake Lucas was awfully familiar. Except, the last time I saw him he was much younger. I had to pull myself together and drive to the apartment. This night was not over yet. "How did you know he wasn't real?" Killian asked inside the car. After what had just happened and all the questions I had, I figured I would take him with me. Of course I didn't trust this stranger, but his team had somehow made the second place of the game. He certainly had to know things about it that I didn't. And he did kind of owe me after I had just saved his life. I remembered how you said something about the face of Lucas being distorted. It reminded me of a show him and I starred in when we were younger. Well, it's a long story length, but let's just say I have some experience with those copycats. "But you know that, right? Because you know who we are," I responded. Killian stayed silent for a moment. "Your friend is Lee, isn't he? He's the reason I started playing the game. He convinced everyone." I know I had to get home, but when he said that I took a full break, locked the doors of the car, and turned to Killian. "What did you just say?" I could tell that he tried to look calm but his hands were shaking. There was a video of him in which he told us about the Smile game. That's all I can tell you. "Okay. And now can you please get me home?" Killian seemed so courageous when we had met in the subway, but now he reminded me of a scared child. It made me feel terrible. He had just looked death into the eye. And now I was basically kidnapping him because I projected my anger on him. In reality he had just been sucked into this horrible game. And it even appeared it was my friend's fault. I took a deep breath to calm myself. "How old are you?" "Killian. 20. Why? Did you see Dr. Worley's Adventure Club when you were little?" "You would have been around 6 or 7. It aired in Watton and the nearby towns. I assume it was on television in Martin too." Yeah, that's how I knew you." He sniffed and then laughed. "I was your biggest fan, but that was years ago. In the video I saw recently Lucas was all grown up." I held the steering wheel tight. "Yeah, it makes sense. They must have somehow lured him in. I know the people who are behind this sick game and they are extremely dangerous. Yeah, I kinda got that when I almost just died. And I believe that they are specifically targeting you, he said. How so? I hadn't actually received the location of the town hall yesterday. I saw Lucas and you at the subway station, and because he was heading in the direction of the mall I thought I'd follow you. You were the only group who got that other location. They wanted me to see Lucas push the jester. I whispered. The jesters are just other players. They get the assignment to do things. My buddy Chris was actually the jester who brought you guys the package a few days ago. I started driving again. There were so many things that were coming together but still so much unclear. I need to get home now. I think my friend might be in danger. You can go if you want, Killian. But I would really appreciate it if you came along and told us everything you know. And I mean everything. He typed something on his phone and then looked at me and nodded. What is going on? Lucas shouted first thing as I opened the door. I had only seen him a few hours ago, but so much had changed since then. I went from thinking that he was a murderer to being in charge of his fate to wondering if he was associated with the game masters of all this. I'll explain later. Has Haley not come back? I responded. Lucas shook his head. I might know where she is. Killian chimed in from the back. My buddy just texted me. He also had to push someone from a bridge. And he got to decide between two girls. What is he talking about? Lucas shouted. Dun dun do do dun. I thought Haley had the game phone. I said. That was mine. Killian pulled out another phone from his pocket. Mix up. Congratulations team with. You won 10K as well as a new member. Show your best behavior. Kitty cat. You are among celebrities. Lucas walked over and grabbed the phone off his hand. Kitty cat. What's that supposed to mean? That's what they call me. Killian's face turned red. My heart started racing. What does that mean? Did they just replace Haley? Lucas sounded as scared and panicked as I was feeling. Check the photos, I said. They had been fast. Our team was now on the second position and Haley's face was replaced by the one of Killian. But Haley hadn't left the game. She was now on the third spot next to Killian's former team member. Can you text your friend? I asked. I tried. He's not responding anymore, but it looks like your friend survived, he said. Or that's what they want us to think. Lucas mumbled. Dun dun do do. Done. Congrats top 5. You all have been waiting for this moment, haven't you? The princess is close, but better watch out or she might steal your heart. Killian's hands started shaking when he read that message. His eyes were tearing up and it almost felt as if he had become a whole new person. Finally, he whispered. Lucas and I stared at him with questioning looks. There was so much happening at once. I had hardly gotten over the fact of choosing to kill Lucas. We had lost Haley and it felt like we all had our own agenda. Now we were supposed to be the top 5 with a new team member. I don't think I want to murder some princess, even if it's another imposter. I still have a bitter taste in my mouth from pushing Lucas over the edge. I said. You did what? Lucas asked. We won't murder her. We'll try to survive, Killian said in a dry tone. We were sitting on the floor of the living room. In front of us lay the phone. There was nothing we could do but wait until we received another clue. We had tried reaching Haley but couldn't get through to her or Killian's friend. Of course we had thought about just going to the place Killian had seen his friend last, but we had a feeling the game masters were closely watching us and the round hadn't officially begun yet. When Killian went to the bathroom and I finally had a moment alone with my friend, I decided I would try to get some information out of him. Lucas, did you tell the game masters about us? Are you the reason they found us? Lucas' eyes opened wide. What the hell? No, he said. You're telling me you didn't take a video of yourself forcing others to join the game? Lucas started laughing. You're joking, right? Did you forget? He stopped talking as Killian stepped back into the room. We stayed silent after that, even though we all had millions of questions in our head. Nobody asked anything. I don't know if the others didn't dare to ask or whether the game had just broken our spirit already. It was dawn when the phone finally played that painful melody again. Round 4 will begin in 13.47 hours. Terribly sad news. Your friend, I am afraid, is long gone. Your princess, however, will be awaiting you at the Curious Carnival in location redacted, and isn't that all that counts? Don't forget your armor. Killian the kitty cat. This boy clearly had very specific intentions going into this game. He was connected to something in here, just as we were. The game had known my real identity from the start. They talked to me individually, made things personal. There had to be a reason that Killian had his own nickname. He kept saying how this game was targeting me and Lucas, but I had a feeling that he was playing an important role too. Just the actual connection wasn't clear to me yet. We still had many hours left before we could go looking for the carnival where we would search for the princess. Hours that should be used carefully to get more insights into the game, or to get to know the intentions of our new teammate. It felt awfully difficult, however, to focus on the game when we didn't even know if Haley was alive at this point. Your friend is long gone. They said it. That bastard teammate of his must have done something to her. Lucas was grinding his teeth. The scars on his mouth seemed to be healing, and instead of looking dangerous he appeared sad and fatigued. We don't know if that's what they mean. I tried to convince both him and myself. I couldn't be thinking of this right now or I would just break down. I'd known Haley ever since I was a teenager. We grew up next to each other and worst of all I was the one who sucked her into this whole mess in the first place when I shared my experience on the kids show with her. She became a target because of me. I took a deep breath. It was time to let my friend in on what exactly I had experienced at the bridge. I was dreading telling him the whole truth because I was afraid he would take it wrong. I had saved Killian after all. Instead of the person that looked like my friend. His reaction was the complete opposite however. He got up and hugged me. "You're a freaking genius, mate. Can't believe you figured out that it was an imposter. Though you really should have believed me when I told you I was at the mall. Well, you didn't make it easy. You've been so secretive." "I've been secretive." He laughed. "What about Haley then? If you weren't so keen on being quiet about everything then maybe we could have gotten some info out of her. I mean honestly what will we do if she is still playing for the other team?" I swallowed. Not sure what to do with the information he just gave me. Still, I finally mumbled but Lucas stayed silent. "She was already in the game. You didn't join in the official first round. The game has been going on for a while now." Killian chimed in. "Haley played the game." Killian nodded. Lucas was still not speaking but his expression told me everything I needed to know. "She got us involved in this, didn't she? Are you starting to understand that you can trust your damn friends?" It took us 3 hours to drive to the location of the carnival which was hidden behind fields in the middle of nowhere. A shimmer of light sparking up the dark fields. The familiar melody playing on repeat could be heard from miles away. The three of us had gotten dressed appropriately and we were wearing our masks. From the distance it looked like a regular carnival. There was a Ferris wheel, carousels, mirror cabinets, food, and game booths, but instead of regular people, everyone except for us was dressed as jesters. Well, not everyone. The rest of the top 5 were spread around the place as well. Nobody approached us though. Not before receiving instructions. We kept an eye open but so far there was no sign of Haley. Done done. Shoot. All of you made it. How wonderful. The princess is awaiting you but she is picky. Catch her first and don't get pierced. The timer ran out just as we received the message. The round had officially begun. As if they had simply been waiting in the dark, observing us. The first group was walking closer towards us. A group of young kids holding sharp weapons. Baseball bats with nails in them. Knives. And daggers. God. They're just children. What is going on here? I whispered. No ducking clue. Lucas responded. But I am certainly not gonna attack them. The kids started getting closer. All humming the melody. Dun dun do dun. Wait. I might have an idea. Lucas said. He stepped on the counter of an abandoned booth standing high up and then with all the volume in his voice he started shouting. Welcome. It's time for another adventure. Then he took off his mask. The kids were staring at him with big smiles on their faces. Completely mesmerized. That's Lee. One of the kids whispered. Where are we going? Lee. What will we do next? Another one said. We did everything you said. What's our next adventure? They were jumping up and down in glee. One after the other they let all their weapons fall to the ground. We were still trying to make sense of the situation when out of nowhere a jester who was sitting on the carousel next to us fell right off his horse. A puddle of blood was forming around them. This person had been hit by an arrow, right inside their heart. Killian ran over and tried to help. I followed. The other players were still in trance, staring at Lucas. We removed the mask and saw the face of a man about my age. Blood was spilling out uncontrollably. We tried to stop it, to block the wound but it was already too late. Alright kids, for the next adventure everyone will go look for a hiding place, Lucas said in a shaky voice. As the other players disappeared he put his mask back on, climbed down, and sat down with us next to the body of the dead jester. Where did that arrow come from? I asked, my blood-drained hand shaking. I looked around and didn't see anyone. Jen, Killian whispered. Who's Jen? We shouted in unison. Killian looked me right in the eyes and then said in the most distressed voice, she's my little sister. Then he turned to Lucas and added, she's the princess because you bastard made her. Before we could react, another arrow was shot on top of the already dead man. We quickly took a step back. Killian and I ran to the closest booth to us, while Lucas hid behind the ticket shop of the carousel. Why didn't you tell us? I shouted after Killian and I had crouched down behind the booth, because he was the one who told her to do it. She watched his videos every day. She already had a tendency to be brutal but watching him brought out the worst in her. Damn, she's so young. She doesn't even know what she's doing. He was almost crying and then a few months ago she just disappeared. I knew it had something to do with the game and so I joined to find her. It took me a while to figure out that she wasn't a player but a game piece. She's a ducking level. Okay. Killian, slow down. Jen was brainwashed into becoming the princess of the game. He nodded. There's something about her. Something that isn't quite right. She is very susceptible to messages of pain and torture. And Lee somehow activated it again. It's like she feels no remorse, but I swear it's not her fault. If I could only get to her, I could. Over there. The arrows are coming from the Ferris wheel. Lucas was shouting from the other side. I think she only shoots when she's at the very top. We need to hurry. Killian didn't even think before jumping up and running towards the wheel. The space in front of the Ferris wheel was full of jesters, dancing around and laughing. More kept coming from different directions, all wearing the masks, but none of them did anything. They wouldn't even acknowledge us. Killian was already in front of the Ferris wheel. He jumped inside one of the open wagons on the bottom. And then the wheel continued turning. Soon the princess would be on top again, shooting her arrows. Lucas and I were just behind, fighting our way through all the jesters that kept appearing. Before we could get to the Ferris wheel, however, the princess was back at the top and sharp arrows were flying through the air. This time she was hitting random jesters around us. Not a single arrow was directed at us. Killian, you need to get to her. Quick! I shouted. These jesters were all innocent players, brainwashed into playing this game so far that they weren't even trying to hide from the shots. Bodies were falling all around us. The situation was so surreal that for a moment I almost put my guard down. I was so distracted that I didn't notice that the jester standing next to me was not quite like the others. Not until I felt the cold knife against my throat. Haley? I asked. The jester laughed and shook their head. Then they pointed towards another jester standing at the bottom of the Ferris wheel. This one was holding a gun and pointed it towards the Ferris wheel. At first I thought they wanted to shoot the princess, but that wasn't their target. While the princess was shooting arrows, Killian had climbed almost all the way up. Bang bang bang. He was so close to getting to his sister, but just like that he collapsed inside the wagon. Blood dripped from the wagon as the Ferris wheel continued moving again and finally finished the turn. As it stopped, the princess walked out with a big smile on her face. One of the jesters took her hand and together they disappeared into the darkness. I tried to look for Lucas to see what he was doing and why he wasn't helping, but I couldn't spot him anywhere. He was just gone. And slowly everyone else was leaving as well until the carnival was empty except for the one other jester and me. The jester then took a step back, put the knife away, and removed their mask. Don't worry, Alex. I'm on your team. I can't begin to describe what a roller coaster of emotions I went through in these last couple of days. Days that felt like an eternity. Together with my friends I got sucked into the loop of a game named Smile. The game of madness, randomness, and pain. I had lost Haley. I had lost Killian. And Killian had lost his poor sister. Nothing went the way I had planned them at all. As much I tried to control the direction of the game, it was always a step ahead of me. I had officially lost control. And now on top of it all, Lucas was gone as well. We had trusted each other with our lives on numerous occasions and I never regretted it. I didn't regret it when I left the life I knew because it was clear to me that I had gained a new family. Lucas and I were like brothers. Brothers who went through the hell that was the TV show of Satan. A show we starred in as kids that made children who watch it do unspeakable things. Without our knowledge, our faces were involved in murder, kidnapping, and suicides. And while we didn't know what we had gotten ourselves into when we were that young and just wanted to act, we had been plagued by guilt ever since the memories of that time came back to us. And so we had sworn to do everything in our power to destroy anything that revolved around that show. But now I wasn't so sure anymore that Lucas was really on the same side as me. And Haley, it seemed, had turned into a cold-blooded killer. Suddenly my family was gone and I was standing there on an empty carnival which had turned eerily silent. It was just me and this woman. I didn't recognize her face at first. She had gotten older, just as I. To be honest, I never expected to see her again. Janie, I whispered, but then my eyes shifted back to the Ferris wheel and I couldn't focus on her anymore. I started running while typing on my phone. Alex, who the hell are you calling? Janie shouted and jumped me from the back. A ducking ambulance. If it's not too late already. I pushed Janie away. You did this. You killed an innocent boy for some shitty game. Why did you even come back? Did you side with them? Was this all planned out from the start? Oh, Alex, I knew you liked me. I heard someone laugh from the back. As I turned around I saw Killian's body drenched in blood, but he got up from the wagon as if nothing had even happened. And then I started realizing that he didn't have any wounds. I moved closer and touched his chest. This is paint. I couldn't control myself. My mouth turned into a big smile followed by hysterical laughter. This situation was so insane, but the relief I felt was incredible. The relief quickly turned to anger, however. I grabbed Killian by his shirt and started shaking him. You were never on our team, were you? You played with us. I'm sorry, Alex. We had to. This was the only way to free my sister. Janie started typing something on her phone and walked over to us. It's because of Lucas. Alex, haven't you understood that yet? He is involved with Worley. He helped him to recruit the players. His video went all around. We believe that every kid who joined this game did so because they saw the video. That's how I even found out about it. He spoke to them on a level that not everyone can understand, but the ones that can lose all their free will. They didn't care if they would have died. They all followed Lucas. No, I whispered. I was with him all throughout the game. None of this is making sense. He cut up his own mouth for duck's sake. Ask your own friend. She got started because of him. Janie pointed towards someone behind the Ferris wheel who was walking up to us. She was wearing a mask, but I knew this was gonna be Haley. Instead of saying anything, she just walked to me and spread her arms around me. "I'm so sorry, Alex." Killian and Haley exchanged a look and she said, "It's taken care of." They left and are already on their way back to Martin. For a second he smiled, but then his expression turned dark again. Why are they not saying anything? The round is over. Can anyone please just tell me what's going on? I almost shouted. Haley sighed and sat down on the platform of the Ferris wheel. Then she told me the story. Weeks ago this game found its way to some people I knew in college. They just called it Smile, and it didn't take long before they were entirely obsessed with it. They wouldn't tell me about any specifics, but from what I could tell it sounded insanely morbid. One day I saw my roommate cutting up the edges of her mouth, and when I asked her what was going on and tried to call a doctor, she jumped me. She went insane and kept repeating that she has to play the game because Lee the adventurer told her so. That combination of words already gave me goosebumps, but I thought it had to be a coincidence. I was in contact with Lee all the time and he never mentioned a game. When she finally showed me the video and I heard the oh so familiar tune, I knew that we were back in the mess of Worley, but this time it seemed like Lee was on their side. After we changed our names, cut so many ties, and everything, it was all back. Why didn't you tell me? Because of the game. You know damn well that none of us could speak about it or they would harm anyone we care about. But the first time I played, I was assigned to a team. My team. Janie chimed in. And just so you know, I never wanted to get back to any of this. I would have been happy never seeing anyone of Worley's Adventure Club again, but my little cousin played the game. I couldn't let anything happen to her. Not after all the children that died back then. Well, and I couldn't let Killian do this all on his own. Wait, so Jen and Killian are your cousins? Killian grinned. Yeah. Also Killian isn't my real name either. I stole that from a movie. And Haley, well, Helen, was helping you guys all this time and you didn't care to tell me. All three of them turned serious. Look, Alex, it's not like we were completely in control. The rules of the game were being decided as things were already going. We had no idea what would happen. And frankly, after everything with Lucas we couldn't know if you weren't involved as well. Killian and Janie had a mission from the start. To save little Jen from the game of Smile. To wake her up and get her back home. They had to be careful because it was clear that the game masters would do anything in their power to scramble up any plan they made. When Killian and Haley had to switch teams, it could all have gone south. Everyone wanted to win the game. To get the princess, but if any other player found her, they would have brought her back to the game masters to collect their reward, and so they came up with a plan with as many twists and turns that neither the game masters nor the other players would know what was going on. They created a distraction. To Lucas and me, it looked like we were going to win. Killian would have gotten to Jen, meaning that our team would win the round and the entire game. But they couldn't have let that happen, not knowing that Lucas might be on the wrong side. Killian had been playing for two teams this entire time. He knew everything but shared only breadcrumbs with us. But now things were finally starting to make sense. When Killian was as near as possible to the princess, almost sure of our win, the jesters came to play. The jesters were all extras, here to confuse us and scare us. Game pieces that the masters found replaceable. Jen was shooting them down without a care in the world because that's what she'd been programmed to do. Nobody would have expected a jester to start shooting a gun. To the masters and us it seemed like a different team was going to win. In reality, however, Haley had shot Killian with a paintball gun. While everyone was distracted, Killian's friend, who was disguised as a jester, brought Jen to a car and drove her off. Now what wasn't clear to me yet was why they didn't go after Jen but instead came for Lucas. Or had Lucas escaped knowing the game was over for him. So what is happening now? We can't be so foolish to assume that they are not currently listening to everything we're saying. I said after they had told me about everything. It doesn't matter. Our team already won. Haley responded. When you started playing the game, they offered you something, didn't they, Alex? They let you choose your reward. They offered that all the children who were still under their spell, or brainwash, would be freed from the game. Dun dun do do dun. There it was. The abhorrent tune. Except, this time we had been impatiently waiting for it. We were sure the game masters were listening to every word we were saying. It didn't really matter anymore at this point, but I knew that things weren't quite over for me yet. Especially with Lucas being away all of a sudden. Killian and Janie had given up on him and would have rather seen him dead, but I wasn't at that point yet. I knew there had to be more to the fact why my friend betrayed us. What I came to find out was just so much worse than what I could have imagined. However, I lost the game. Big time. Congratulations on the win. Team S. You must have the biggest smile on your face right now. You took your well-deserved reward. Though we can't promise that our princess will not rip out more hearts in the future. She's a first-class royal with a wonderful thirst for blood. The familiar voice was blasting from the speakers all throughout the carnival. Now, sweet Alex, our main adventurer, it is time to pay your debt as you lost. Sweet child, don't worry though, the boys of Worley's Adventure Club are already awaiting you. We can't wait for you to join. Please follow our kind gestures. The rest of you may leave now. It has been a blast to play and I'm sure we'll see each other again soon. It was finished off by the sound of a smile. There they are, Helen said and pointed to two jesters smiling at us. Please be careful. You don't know what might expect you. I took a deep breath and followed the jesters through the carnival. Everything around us was silent again. The remains of lifeless players in jester costumes were lying in puddles of their own blood. Poor souls who were sucked into this because they had listened to Lee's video. It should never have come this far. I should have known this would happen if you play with monsters. The jesters stopped in front of a mirror cabinet. They opened the entrance and waved me inside. Everywhere I saw myself. Distorted. Small. Tall. It didn't matter which mirror I looked into. I felt revolted by my own appearance. And then a second face appeared from the darkness. And he looked worse than I'd ever seen him before. Lucas. Alex. He cried out. I ducked up. I really ducked up. Before I could walk over to him, the mirrors changed. They had screens built in and were playing something. The same video of Lee was reflected in each mirror. He was dressed in the green clothes that he always wore on the children's show. But this wasn't him as a child. It looked as if it had been taken a few weeks ago. The melody played and Lee looked straight into the camera. Hello, hello, hello. Adventurers. I want you to listen closely now. He smiled. I want to play a game with you. A game you will never want to finish. A game that will make each and every one of you smile from the bottom of your heart. Isn't that exciting? His face turned into a frown. I know you hate your life. I know deep down you would like to see the world paved in the color red. Just as I. So why don't you join me and we can have lots and lots of. The video broke off there and the mirror went back to normal. You ducking bastard. I said under my breath. We wanted to put an end to this. We wanted to save them. I shouted. Alex, it's not like you think it is. We walked through the cabinet until we finally found each other. I didn't know if I wanted to punch him or apologize. It's true. I made the video for the producer. Well, no. That's not right. I made a video. He changed things, just like they did back then. The man behind Worley's Adventure Club reached out to me. I have no idea how he even found me, but he was extremely persistent, threatening everyone I know if I didn't listen to him or told anyone else about this. He sighed and looked to the ground. Then he made me a proposition. You know how all those children disappeared when we first aired our show? The children we wanted to save but couldn't find. He told me if he could take one video of me then they would all be free to go. And you believed him. He was very persuasive. That producer isn't a normal person. Alex, you should know that. He calls himself Mr. V and is this ducking eccentric cult leader or whatever, but look, Alex. He did let them all go. All those kids and teenagers playing the game. They were former hostages. Did you see that corpses outside? You didn't save them. But I tried. He was shouting now. And don't act so ducking innocent. Alex, you helped him too. Or why else did you make me cut open my own face? I swallowed and took a step back. What did he promise you? Alex, all throughout this mess, nobody had asked me what my intentions were to play the game. And I had no idea how to tell him. No need to be ashamed. Alex, you can tell him. A man with dark hair and shiny eyes had entered the room without me even realizing it. I had never seen him before, but I recognized his voice. He called me after we had already started playing the game. When it still seemed normal and all we did was take a photo of us. He called when I was alone. And he made a proposition if I played the game and won. And next to him stood Worley, with an expression of deep fear. He wanted to save good old Worley. Isn't that adorable? If you remember Worley, he was the adult in the show we acted in. He had once betrayed us and threatened many lives. We had abandoned him and sent him into prison, hoping to be rid of him. We couldn't risk having him around, but Worley was a victim. Just like us, he was sucked into the show without knowing what it did. He had tricked us, but I knew that he wasn't really a bad person. We swore to forget about him, but when I heard his voice introducing us to the game, I knew they had somehow found him. The game master promised me I could save him if I played the game and did as asked. The man took out a phone and started playing a message. I know this is insane, but look, you have to do it. Trust me. You have to, or everyone else will suffer. We need to play the game. We need to smile. You trust me, right? I had no idea that this was what they sent Lee before he cut his mouth. He told me to take the message and I did, without knowing what exactly they would use it for. I wanted to step out at that point, when they told me to harm myself, but I thought if you told me that I had to go through with it, there would be a good reason for it. I had no idea that reason was saving ducking Worley. I'm sorry, I whispered. Lee stayed quiet for a moment. Then he added me too. My friend and I had wanted to help, to make things better, but instead we only put more suffering. I do have to admit, both of you are terrific actors. Not one of you ever spilled the guts, and don't worry boys. I'm not a complete monster, the man said as if he had just read my mind. I'm a man of honor and I intend to keep my promise. Everyone who had been under our spell will be free after this game. However, Lee, I'm afraid you did lose, and so I will have to keep that video of you for future purposes. I'm sure you understand. As to you, Alex, I bet your friends will forgive you eventually. Worley here however never will. I mean, losers don't deserve a reward. Without batting an eye he slid a razor-sharp knife right through Worley's throat. I had no other chance but to look at dozens of mirrors showing how the man I tried to save lost the life in his eyes as he collapsed to the ground. As much as I prayed, this time it wasn't fake blood. It took us a while to comprehend what had happened. I thought my friends and I would separate for good, but we didn't, and we never would. Not as long as we had this common enemy. Mr. V did keep his promise and the children were freed. Young adults were brought back to families who never thought they would see their children again. It was a bittersweet end, though I have to admit that the bitter taste overruled. It wasn't easy, but I think after much explaining we all understood that Lee's intentions were coming from a good place. But he had been naive and gullible, just as I. It would still take a long time until we all trusted each other again, especially as we gained 2 more members to our group. An old friend I never thought I would see again, and someone I had grown really close to in those few days. The horrific roller coaster that was the Smile game was over. While the game ignited mistrust in all of us, we also understood that we were all sucked so deep into all of this, not being able to distinguish right from wrong anymore. We had been victims and accomplices at once, but there was one thing we all agreed upon. Worley might be dead, but the Adventure Club will never be able to escape from this. Not as long as they know our faces. So if you ever stumble upon a video inviting you on an adventure, don't listen to us. I feel like Haley is going to end up as the princess, and they're gonna have to choose between killing Killian and Haley. I bet they kidnapped Haley, made an imposter of her, and the imposter is the princess waiting for them. Holy shit. I wonder who the princess is and what happened to Haley. Yeah, and I want to know who the other girl is. Oh my god, I'm screaming, I'm on the edge of my seat. Killian did turn out of the blue, and he seems to know something about this last round. Finally, what does that mean? I'd be super cautious with him. I'm worried the game masters listen in on all the conversations they have and will deduct points at the end of the game based on how many times they asked questions that were against the rules.